Welcome to the Culinary Education Center. My name is Michelle Zuppi. I'm the Department Chair of the Culinary Arts Program. Our program is a collaboration between Brookdale Community College and the Monmouth County Vocational School District. Our students earn degrees in culinary and pastry arts with extensive hands-on learning. We would like you to join us while our faculty and students demonstrate a variety of recipes. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Culinary Education Center. My name is Adrienne Longhitano. I'm a pastry chef instructor at the school. Today I'm here with Anna Messina, a former graduate of our pastry arts program. She is currently a culinary student, and today she's going to be preparing for you a traditional Viennese dessert called a Sacher Torte. Anna?
So first things first, before we do anything, we want to make sure that we preheat our oven to 350 degrees. Here I've separated 14 eggs into their yolks and whites. We'll be whipping them separately. So that'll be going into the bowl of our stand mixer. This will be combined with 5 ounces of sugar. And we're going to want to whip this on high until it reaches about a pale yellow consistency. It takes about 3 to 4 minutes.
Now when you're whipping egg yolks and sugar together, it's important to know that once you've added the sugar to the egg yolks, you have to keep whipping them. You can't just leave the sugar sitting with the yolks because it will draw the moisture out of the yolks and you'll end up with something called burnt eggs, and that's going to affect the consistency of your final batter.
All right, I think we're there. Okay. Now separately, I'll be whipping the egg whites. Now you're not going to want to put the sugar in immediately. You're going to want to whip the whites to a medium peak first, and then we'll add the sugar in gradually.
And the reason that she's doing that is if you add sugar prematurely before the eggs have had a chance to whip up, they're not going to be able to achieve their maximum volume.
Another important thing to remember when you're whipping egg whites is that you want all of your instruments to be really, really clean. If there's any sort of fat or grease on the bowl or the whisk attachment, they're not going to whip fully.
So while the egg whites are whipping, we'll tell you a little bit of a backstory behind this dessert, which is it was commissioned to the pastry staff of Prince Metternich in Vienna. He was having some very highly esteemed guests over for dinner. So he went to his pastry staff and he asked them to come up with the best dessert that they possibly could. And luckily for the pastry cook, the pastry chef was out that day. So the burden of this was on his shoulders. And he came up with what is now known as the Sacher Torte. And it is actually named after a hotel in Vienna called the Sacher Hotel, which it was owned by the pastry cook who developed this dessert. His name was Franz Sacher.
All right, so now we've got a little under medium peak. This is when we're going to want to add our sugar. So to this I'll be adding 7 ounces of granulated sugar.
And she's going to add that a little bit at a time so that we don't deflate the whites. At this point, it's very hard to actually over-whip egg whites once the sugar's been added. And you'll notice that the color goes from almost a pale white to a very bright, shiny white once the sugar's been added. And our goal here is to get to a medium stiff peak, which I think you've achieved.
I think so. You can tell when you pull.
Okay, so we have a medium peak there. That's good.
There we go. All right, we're going to leave these guys alone for a minute and take care of our dry ingredients. So into a separate bowl, we're going to sift together 6 ounces of bread flour, 3 ounces of cake flour, and 3 ounces of cocoa powder. Now, if you don't have access to bread flour and cake flour, you can totally just use all-purpose flour. It won't make that much of a difference. And the reason that we sift the flour and the cocoa powder is that sometimes there can be little lumps, as you can see. We just want to make sure that we really work those all through.
Our goal is not to deflate all the air we've already whipped into the eggs, and if you have to worry about getting lumps out of flour when you're folding it in, it's going to deflate it. So it's best to strain it first.
Okay. And now we're also going to add 3 ounces of hazelnut flour.
Hazelnut flour simply is hazelnuts that have been roasted and they're ground with a little bit of sugar. You can actually buy hazelnut flour already made. If you can't find it, you can just take fresh hazelnuts and put it in a food processor with a little bit of sugar and pulse it. You don't want to just turn the food processor on full blast because otherwise the oils will start coming out of the nuts.
And now we are ready to combine our wet and dry ingredients. So,
Yolks.
thank you.
You're welcome.
We're going to gently put the whites into the bowl. The goal here is to really keep the whites as inflated as possible. You want to keep as much air in them as you can because there's no chemical leavening in this cake. The egg whites are what are going to give the cake its rise. So there's all our whites. Into this, we're going to fold in gently our yolks.
And you can see how shiny the whites are and how pale and thick the yolks have become by whipping the air into them.
And some people might ask, well, why don't you just whip the whole eggs together? It's because if you whip, it's the same reason why we want to make sure all of our mixing equipment is really clean. If you whip any fat into egg whites, they're not going to inflate like this. They'll still get a little bit fluffy, but not nearly as fluffy as we need them to be. And when you're folding, you want to go from the middle to the outside and up and over. And turn the bowl as you go.
And again, she's folding to maximize the amount of air that we've incorporated into the batter. And it's okay to see some streaks of yolk in there. You want it to be pretty much combined, but it's okay if you have some streaks left because we're going to be folding other ingredients in as well.
Okay. Now we are going to fold in our dry ingredients. I'm going to do this in 2 parts, actually. So the flour doesn't go flying everywhere. Okay, it's good for the first batch.
While Anna is folding in the dry ingredients, a torte is defined as a thin cake that has some of its flour replaced with a nut flour. So in our case, we're using hazelnut flour. You could have also replaced it with almond flour, pistachio flour, pecan flour. Of course, that would not make it a traditional Sacher Torte, but that is an option. That's looking good.
All right, I think we're almost there. Now, I'm going to want to add some chocolate and butter that I've pre-melted together. This is 7 ounces of butter and 3 ounces of chocolate.
Now, when you melt chocolate, you need to be careful that the bowl that you're melting it in has no moisture in it whatsoever. We've used bittersweet chocolate here, and we melted it over a double boiler. So we put about 1 inch of water in a saucepan, put the chocolate in a bowl, and rested that on top of the saucepan, and we heated it over a very, very low flame. You want to be careful that you don't burn the chocolate. An option also is to melt your chocolate in the microwave. That's really only advisable if your microwave has a carousel turntable in it. Otherwise, there are hot spots in a microwave, and you may end up burning your chocolate. So the preferred method is to do it over a double boiler.
All right, this is almost all folded together. And it is okay if this is also a little streaky. Okay. Now I'm going to switch to a bowl scraper.
Right here.
Thank you. And I'll be pouring this batter into a prepared half sheet pan that I've slathered with butter and lined with parchment paper.
And again, she's being really careful here not to deflate this batter. And also, this is not the type of batter that you could leave sitting on the counter because, as Anna mentioned, it is not leavened with a chemical leavener. So the longer it sits, the more it's going to deflate. So we want to get it into the oven as soon as possible.
And now I'm just using an offset spatula very lightly to work this batter into the corners of the pan. And this will ensure that it bakes evenly.
If you don't have a half sheet pan at home, you can use a jelly roll pan, which most households have. This particular quantity of batter also will make 2 10-inch by 2-inch round cakes.
Okay.
Just spread the middle a little bit and you're good to go.
And this will go into a 350-degree oven for about 20 minutes or until a toothpick inserted comes out clean. And this is, for this cake, you don't want to tap it on the counter. Usually for American-style cakes, they say to tap out the air bubbles. Obviously, we don't want to do that because we worked so hard to keep that air in there that we don't want to get that air out by tapping it.
Okay, into the oven.
I live my dream every day working in my own restaurant. It's great waking up every day, coming to a job I love and seeing, getting an immediate response from people. Probably wouldn't have got that without my start at Brookdale. The Culinary Education Center at Brookdale was great to me because it taught me the basic skills I needed to pursue a career in the industry that I love, which eventually led to me opening my own restaurant. Each year we've continued to grow, added staff members. I'm proud to say all of which are either graduates or students of Brookdale's Culinary Education Center. I've also been fortunate enough to be nominated twice for James Beard Award, Best Chef Mid-Atlantic. Brookdale's easy, it's accessible, it's right in your own backyard. Course times are all varied, you could always fit it in your schedule. You have no reason not to go. My name's Andrew Aranio, owner of Drew's Bayshore Bistro and Keyport, and I got my start at Brookdale.
Planning a large-scale event or conference? Consider Brookdale Community College and its versatile Collins Arena. The Collins Arena is the premier venue for all kinds of corporate and community events. Live concerts and celebrity happenings, trade shows and expositions, sporting events and tournaments. The Collins Arena has countless layout options to meet your needs. Bring your next event to life at the Collins Arena at Brookdale Community College. Go to brookdalecc.edu/events and start planning your next event now.
I choose to be a winner, on and off the court. Brookdale helped me achieve my success definitely by putting the right people around me. The athletic department is probably one of the best in community college in New Jersey, I would think, or maybe even across the country. With only 8 people on your team, and knowing that you guys worked really hard every day during the season, on and off the court with your studies, on the court with the coaches, I think that after winning, I feel like everybody appreciated everything that we did during the season to get there. Being able to succeed in the classroom by getting on the dean's list and then winning the national championship was probably the best success I could have at Brookdale. I'm Neil Thompson, Jersey Blues national champion. Success starts at Brookdale.
Okay, so now we've got our cooled cake. I'm going to turn it out onto a piece of parchment paper. And since we buttered it and parchment lined it, it came right out, not a problem. And then we just peel the parchment right off. Thank you. Our next step is to spread a thin layer of raspberry jam onto the base. Usually this is done with an apricot jam, but you can really use any kind of filling that you want. The key though is because it's a torte, you want really thin layers. So in this case, less is more. And I'm just using a small offset to spread this. Now if the cake were still a little bit warm to the touch and you had cold jam, you might want to warm the jam up a little bit first because it could tear the cake, but we don't have that problem because this is already room temperature.
Now Anna's going to be cutting out individual portions of this cake for individual desserts, so you're going to end up with a lot of cake scraps left. So your family members can enjoy the cake scraps, or sometimes what we do is we take the cake scraps, we mix them with some jam, and then we scoop them out with an ice cream scooper, and we make balls out of them, and then we dip them in ganache. And you could serve it as almost like a petit-four.
Okay. So we've got a nice thin layer on here. That was maybe about half a cup of jam, maybe not even that much. So I've got our hexagonal cutter here. Like she said, you can use any kind you want, any size you want. Just going to press, even pressure. Make it a little dirty, but that's the fun of baking, right?
There you go. And when you're cutting these out, you want to keep them very closely spaced so you don't waste a lot of cake.
Okay.
And then you would continue doing that with the rest of the cake. So we have our 2 cutouts, and Anna's now going to show you how to make the glaze for this, which is called ganache.
So basic ganache is equal parts heavy cream and chocolate. You can use any kind of chocolate you want. Generally, the lower the content of cocoa butter, the better it'll set. So we have 8 ounces of heavy cream that I'm going to scald. Thank you.
We don't want to boil the cream. We want it to heat to approximately 90 degrees. So we're just going to scald it, which means there's going to be little bubbles forming around the side of the pan. And what we've also done separately is we've heated bittersweet chocolate, 8 ounces of bittersweet chocolate over a double boiler, very low heat. We made sure there was no water whatsoever in the bowl, otherwise the chocolate will seize up. And then you really can't do much more to it than add more liquid. So this is ready to go. This is also approximately 90 degrees. Now, the reason why you want these temperatures to be on the lower side is we're trying to create an emulsion. And if your chocolate is too hot or your cream is too hot, when you combine the two, the ganache is going to break. What that means is the butter that we're going to add at the end, or the butter that's in the cream, is going to start to seep out. And it might look okay when you start. It might look very shiny when you glaze your cake. Then when you put it in the refrigerator to set up and you look at it a couple of hours later, you're going to see a layer of chocolate and a layer of butter on the top. That means that your ganache is broken and the emulsion was not properly prepared. So if you keep the two temperatures of the chocolate and the cream at about 90 degrees, you have less of a risk of that happening.
All right, so we got bubbles forming around the outside here. So our cream is ready to go.
You pour and I'll whisk.
I'm slowly going to pour in the heavy cream.
Now, traditionally, ganache is made a different way. You chop your chocolate up very finely, and then you just heat the cream. You pour it over the chocolate and let it start to melt on its own, and then you start whisking it, and then you add your softened butter. You can do it either way, but the preferred method for us, melting the chocolate and heating the cream separately, will give you a better emulsion because you're not shocking the chocolate with hot cream, since both of them are the same temperature. Okay, so right now this looks like chocolate milk. Just move that in front of you. You want to take over?
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay. Just want to keep going till we got this nice and combined. And then we're going to add an ounce of unsalted butter.
And this butter has been softened. The last thing you want to do is add cold butter to this and have to put it back over the heat. That's also going to break the emulsion. So you want to make sure your butter is soft. When we say soft, it means if you squeeze it with your fingertips, you should see the imprint of your fingertips in the butter. And you want to make sure that that butter is completely melted. And it looks good.
Yep. Okay, so our ganache is all set. Our next step will be to enrobe the cake and the jam in the ganache. So I'm going to get a full sheet pan.
Now we've set this up with a piece of parchment paper underneath and a cooling rack on top so that it'll catch the excess ganache.
Okay. I'm just going to pour the ganache into a pitcher here for ease of pouring. You can also use a ladle. If you have a smaller amount of ganache, you can just pour it right on there. And generally when you're pouring, you want to pour straight into the middle first, and then it'll just kind of flow out over onto the sides, and it'll give you a nice even layer.
And while she pours, I'll tap. That will help it along. Perfect. Okay. Now, we're going to let these set up at room temperature. If you put these immediately in the refrigerator, what's going to happen is the ganache is going to crack. So we want this to set up at room temperature. It's going to go from a shiny finish to almost a matte finish. Once that happens, then you can store it in the refrigerator. And when you're ready to serve it, you want to take it out about a half hour before you're going to serve it so that it's at room temperature.
We're just going to let these set up, and then I'll show you after they've been done setting up how to plate. Okay, so now we've got our Sacher Torte that's been allowed to set. The ganache is all ready to go. So I'm just going to show you how to plate it. Now generally when you're plating any kind of cake or pastry that has a filling that you can't see, you're going to want to put a garnish on it that is representative of what is inside of it. So if we had mint, we could put a mint leaf. If it was orange, we could put orange peel, etc. So I'm actually just going to place 3 raspberries right on top. and you have your finished Sacher Torte.
Thank you for joining us today at the Culinary Education Center. Please stay tuned for more of our recipes.